Welcome to the David Pakman Show. New York City's stop and frisk policy. We've talked about it for quite some time. It is championed by Mayor Michael Bloomberg as something that reduces crime, that has saved many, many lives. And it turns out now that a federal judge agrees that it is a policy that violates the 4th and 14th Amendment, that it unfairly targets or profiles people who are not white. And Michael Bloomberg is not happy about it. There's a New York Times article about this that sums it up well. A federal judge ruled that the stop and frisk tactics of the New York Police Department violate the constitutional rights of minorities in the city. This repudiates a major element in the Bloomberg administration's crime-fighting legacy. The use of these police stops has been widely cited by city officials as a linchpin of New York's success story in seeing murders and major crimes fall to historic lows. The police say the practice has saved the lives of thousands of young Black and Hispanic men by removing thousands of guns from the streets. Lewis, before we get into the constitutionality, the ruling, and the future, do you believe the claims from New York police that it has saved thousands of lives?
I think that's probably impossible to determine. Perhaps had it continued, maybe, yeah, definitely. But I don't think you can put a number on it like that. You don't know how many of these people were going to kill other people with the guns that they confiscated.
The judge, Shira A, found that the police department resorted to a policy of indirect racial profiling as it increased the number of stops in minority communities. That has led to officers routinely stopping Blacks and Hispanics who would not have been stopped if they were white. I think that is the key part. She talks in her 195-page decision about the stops violating the Fourth Amendment, which protects against unreasonable searches and seizures by the government, as well as the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause. Michael Bloomberg says the case was deliberately mishandled in a way that was not a fair trial. He's going to continue fighting it. So I'm interested in this. Let's say Michael Bloomberg is correct that, yes, stop and frisk, regardless of whether it unfairly or in any kind of other blanket way targets minorities, it has prevented thousands of crimes, thousands of murders, even though we don't know that, as Lewis said. Let's for a second suppose that it is true. Would you rather, and this is an honest question, I'm not asking it as a rhetorical, I'm not asking it as a push question, would you rather live in a country that has more crime and doesn't violate people's rights, or a country that has less crime but achieves it by violating people's rights? Personally, what's your instinct, Lewis? What would you prefer?
Yeah, that's a tough question. Personally, I'm never going to be walking around illegally with a gun, and it's unfortunate that the racial profiling comes into play because these cops could just as easily stop white people and frisk them as well.
In
But
fact,
just
Lewis, as we talked about, it wasn't last week. I think it was when not during your vacation week, we talked about how white people in New York were disproportionately more likely than minorities to be even carrying guns. So we actually talked about, if it's true that this policy of disproportionately stopping and frisking minorities has saved thousands of lives, if you believe that, it stands to reason that stopping and frisking white people would actually have saved even more lives, but there doesn't seem to be an interest in changing that policy.
No, there doesn't. And it's hard to think of any other way to get illegal guns off the street because they're illegal. You don't know where they are unless you have some type of program where you're offering people tons of money to anonymously hand in their weapons. There's really no way to do it.
A buyback program, exactly. All right, I'm opening it up to the audience. Let's say it does work. Would you prefer rights be violated if you knew it reduced crime? And what are your thoughts on that? I'm sure we're going to get a lot of reaction.